This story is about one girl's disappearance that kept the whole world tense for decades. The Pope, the Vatican, the mafia, and secret services are involved in this case. There are dozens of incredible theories, from a series of coincidences to conspiracies on a global scale. In this video, we have collected all the available information on this case and tried to answer the main question: what happened to Emanuela Orlandi? What first comes to your mind when you think about the Vatican? Everyone knows that it's a tiny city-state located in Rome and that it's the heart of the Catholic world. However, there are dark sides related to this place, from global conspiracy theories to very real events that shocked the whole world. We'll talk about one of these events today. It's about a mysterious disappearance of 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi that got surrounded by lots of terrible and unbelievable theories over the years. There were theories about the involvement of secret services and Freemasons, the mafia, and even the clergy themselves. At some points, it seemed like the disappearance of this one girl was the result of such a global conspiracy that the reveal could change our world forever. But you need to learn about the backstory before diving into all these details. Emanuela Orlandi was the daughter of an employee of the Vatican Institute of Religious Affairs that also functions as a bank in this tiny state. It's very important that she was a Vatican citizen, one of the few. Her parents had 5 children. Emanuela was an obedient girl. She went to school, sang in the church choir, played the piano and flute. On the surface, she looked like a poster child from a respected family. Everything changed on the evening of June 22, 1983. After school, Emanuela went to the Victoria Conservatory at the Pontifical Institute of Sacred Music. She was learning to play the piano and flute there. We should note that the conservatory was located a little over 3 miles away from the Vatican. Later, her classmates recalled that she was absent-minded that day and was even late to her music school, and that had never happened before. Moreover, she asked to go home earlier, before her classes were actually over. At 6:50 p.m., she was about to leave the conservatory, but before leaving, she called her older sister Federica and said that some man offered her a simple job when she was on her way to her music school, handing out flyers advertising makeup products at a fashion show the next weekend. He promised to pay her $200 for this job, a very decent amount of money by the standards of 1983. Unsurprisingly, Emanuela was thrilled by this opportunity. However, her sister didn't share her enthusiasm and told Emanuela that things like that should be discussed with her parents. They agreed to meet in half an hour to talk about everything a little bit more. But Federica never got to see her sister that evening. Emanuela also didn't come home, and her worried parents called the police in the morning. The investigators started questioning possible witnesses and reconstructing the chronology of all the events. Emanuela usually went to her music school by bus, and the bus stop was just 0.12 miles away from the doors of her school. This meant that if the girl was kidnapped, the criminal had very little time to do it. While talking to the police, Emanuela's friends recalled that on the day of her disappearance, she stopped near a green BMW car and talked about something with the driver. According to the eyewitnesses, there was a package with the logo of a cosmetics company in the back seat of the car. The police's attempts to find a similar car weren't successful, but some unexpected clues about this case were revealed 2 days later. The girl's family received a call. The stranger introduced himself as Pierluigi and said that his girlfriend knew a girl who looked like Emanuela, but she called herself Barbara. According to Pierluigi, Barbara sold cosmetics and played the flute in a square in central Rome. Another man, who identified himself as Mario, also called the family and told them about a girl named Barbara who looked like Emanuela. She told him that she had decided to run away from home, but planned to return for her sister's wedding in September. This detail convinced the girl's parents that it was really their daughter because only close relatives knew about those wedding plans. But all these calls didn't help the police to find Emanuela. In the meantime, thousands of leaflets with information about the missing girl were posted all over Rome. On July 3rd, something happened that let the whole world know about Emanuela Orlandi. Pope John Paul II made a public statement after the traditional prayer. That was the first time the Pope had commented on the child's disappearance, which would later serve as the basis for various conspiracy theories. The Pope said that he was close to the Orlandi family and asked the kidnappers to return the girl to her parents. This statement caused an uproar because the theory about kidnapping wasn't really considered at that moment. The police thought that Emanuela simply ran away from home. But everything changed after the Pope's statement. Everyone started to believe that the girl had been kidnapped. In addition, the Pope's involvement in this case raised a number of awkward questions. Why was he so sure that the girl was kidnapped? Did he know more than the police and the girl's family? There were no answers to these questions. But the Pope could have had a very simple reason for making this statement. Emanuela was one of the few inhabitants who actually had Vatican citizenship, and this fact could mean that the Catholic Church, represented by the Pope, felt personal responsibility. On July 5th, the Orlandi family got another phone call. The man on the other end of the line had a strong American accent and said that the girl had been kidnapped. He promised she would be released in exchange for the Turkish terrorist Mehmet Ali Agca. 2 years before the disappearance of Emanuela, this man attempted to assassinate the Pope and was jailed for life. The details of this case are not directly related to the current story, but we should mention that according to one of the theories, the USSR's secret services were on Mehmet's side. The man with an American accent kept calling Emanuela's relatives. He played a recording of the girl's voice and told the police to check the trash can in the square in front of the Italian Parliament and then the chapel at the airport in Rome. There, they found photocopies of her study card and copies of a piece by the composer Luigi Uke. This was the piece Emanuela was learning to play on the flute. Another call led the investigators to a cassette tape that had recordings of a woman screaming. The phone line during these calls was monitored by the Vatican. The Secretary of State of the Holy See, Cardinal Agostino Casaroli, arranged talks with the alleged kidnappers. But no one knew exactly what they were talking about, not even the police. The Vatican decided to keep everything secret, and no one could get this information out of them. The man with an American accent kept calling for 3 months, and then suddenly announced that the operation concerning Emanuela Orlandi was closed. Despite the fact that this information could have been interpreted in different ways, he didn't give any more details. The identity of this mysterious man is still unknown. According to one theory, these calls were made by the Treasurer General, Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, who was an American. Alas, the police couldn't interrogate him even as a witness. The Vatican didn't let them. Without any actual evidence against the treasurer, The Italian authorities had no reason to question him, but later he still becomes a part of one of the theories of the girl's disappearance. Various radical groups claimed responsibility for the disappearance of Emanuela throughout all this time. It was only later discovered that most of them didn't actually exist. The intelligence services of other countries were behind all of that. They tried to use this situation for their own gain. According to an Italian investigator, Ferdinando Imposimado, a former German intelligence officer, Gunter Bensack, told him that one of those Turkish radical groups was created by the German secret services. With its help, the Stasi tried to convince the Vatican that Turkish fanatics were behind the attempted assassination on the Pope, and not the Bulgarian secret services associated with the KGB. This theory is supported by the fact that Agca publicly refused to be released from an Italian prison. Of course, the Turkish radical groups knew that the demands for his release didn't actually come from his associates. Giuliano Ganghi, an Italian intelligence officer from SISDE, once told Emanuela's brother that his organization was behind another group that claimed responsibility for the girl's disappearance. In addition, Ganghi helped track down the same BMW that witnesses saw on the day of Emanuela's disappearance. But weird things started happening here. After learning the name and the address of the owner of the car, Ganghi went to her house. The woman was outraged by his appearance and refused to say anything on this topic, and when Ganghi returned to work, he was advised to stay away from that woman and not try to find any more details. The Pope publicly appealed to the kidnappers 7 more times with a request to release Emanuela, but to no avail. On Christmas, he came to the Orlandi family's house and once again told them about the official version of the events. Allegedly, an international criminal group was behind the girl's kidnapping, and this group was apparently trying to get Agca released from prison. The Pope also promised to help Emanuela's brother Pietro to get a job in the Vatican Bank. It's not clear why he made this promise. Perhaps the Pope knew the truth about the girl's disappearance and tried to do at least something for her family out of guilt. The Vatican's communication with the Orlandi family stopped after this for many years. The girl's relatives could only guess what had happened to her, and there were a lot of theories. From time to time, there were some clues that hinted that the girl was still alive. On April 26, 1984, a local newspaper printed an article about Emanuela with a photograph of her next to John Paul II and her friend Gabriella Giordani. The Giordani family got a call that same morning, and Gabriella's mother was the one who answered the call. An unidentified man said, "Tell Gabriella that Emanuela is alive and well." It was impossible to establish the identity of the caller. It was suggested that Emanuela was treated as a collateral damage in the conflict between the Vatican and the Magliana Mafia group. The essence of the conflict was money. The Mafia invested $24 million in the Ambrosiano Bank, which is allegedly connected to the Vatican. In 1982, the bank transferred more than $1 billion into some shady South American shell companies. Some of those were owned by the Vatican, and then the bank went bankrupt. The gangsters lost their millions, and this obviously didn't make them happy. According to this theory, the criminals used Emanuela to influence the Vatican, demanding the return of their money. It's unknown if this theory is true, but in 1984, the Vatican Institute for Religious Affairs agreed to pay the bank's creditors $244 million. Moreover, the head of the criminal group, Renatino Mancini, was buried in the tomb of the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, the place where only the highest ministers of the Vatican are allowed to rest. In 2012, the police opened the tomb and found Renatino's grand sarcophagus. It had the same marble statue as the tomb of the pontiff. There were boxes filled with human bones in a niche next to the sarcophagus. One more fact points to the version about the involvement of the mafia. The gangster's lover said that she saw Emanuela. She was allegedly kept in a basement under a building in the prestigious Roman district of Monteverde. The mansion in question did actually belong to the gangsters. The investigators found a fragment of a chain in the basement, but they had no way of establishing whether Emanuela was being held there. According to the gangster's lover, the girl was killed a few months after the abduction. But the woman assured the police that the Ambrosiano Bank had nothing to do with it. According to her, Bishop Marcinkus needed the girl to blackmail the Vatican elite. He allegedly had an agreement with Renatino that the gangsters would help him in exchange for his help with the withdrawal of the dirty money of the mafia abroad through the Vatican sources. However, her testimony doesn't sound very believable. Not only was the woman constantly mixing up the numbers and the locations, she also used prohibited substances for a long time. The next theory is even more unbelievable. In September 2017, journalist Emiliano Fittipaldi published a document that indicated that the Holy See was able to find Emanuela Orlandi safe and sound. 5 pages of typewritten text were stolen from a safe in the Vatican 3 years ago. They list all the details about the costs associated with the disappearance of the girl between 1983 and 1997. According to this document, the Vatican paid for the search for Emanuela. The list includes expenses for the medical services, travel, and accommodation of the girl in other cities, including London. Over the course of 14 years, 483 million lira were spent on this. This theory seems extremely weird. Why did the Vatican not return the girl home, but hid her for many years? But it is what it is. Such a document does exist, but it could also turn out to be a fake. The Vatican denied all these theories, which is not surprising. In 2013, the new Pope Francis met with the girl's family and declared, "Emanuela is in heaven." The relatives were shocked by this statement. Why did the Pope talk about this with such confidence? Emanuela's brother Pietro told him that he still believed that his sister would return, but Francis only repeated, "She is in heaven." In 2018, a strange envelope was sent to the Orlandi family's lawyer. It didn't have the sender's name or return address, and it only had a photograph and a note inside. It was an image of a statue of an angel in the Teutonic Cemetery in the Vatican. The letter said, "If you want to find Emanuela, look where the angel is looking." The problem was that the statue looked directly at the graves of the German princesses Charlotte Friederike zu Mecklenburg and Sophia von Hohenlohe. The authorities decided to check this theory and asked the Vatican for permission to exhume the graves. The Holy See gave the go-ahead only a year later, and everyone was surprised after it actually happened. There was no one in the graves, no Emanuela, no princesses. But several boxes with hundreds of bones were found nearby. They also had nothing to do with the case. Chemical analysis showed that those were the bones of people who lived no later than the end of the 19th century. 2018 was also remembered for another event. In autumn, workers found bones at the embassy of the Holy See to the Italian Republic in Rome. Newspapers immediately suggested that the remains could belong to Emanuela, but the DNA analysis refuted this assumption. Now Emanuela's brother Pietro believes that the Vatican always knew the truth about the girl's disappearance, and there are still those who keep this secret. The reason they're hiding it may be trivial. The truth could damage the reputation of the Vatican, and they can't allow that. He's also sure that Emanuela became collateral damage in the conflict between the Vatican and some criminals, but what exactly happened to her is still unknown. If she was alive, why didn't she contact her family? After all, her parents, brothers and sisters have been living with this burden for decades and suffer because of it. Perhaps we'll never know the fate of Emanuela. The Vatican has tremendous influence that will allow them to hide the truth for a very long time. What do you think happened to Emanuela? Maybe the Vatican has nothing to do with it at all, and all of this is just the result of increased media attention. In any case, it's hard to believe in it. There are too many coincidences and facts that tell us the scale of this crime is truly global.